We've all heard the advice, right? Writers should read more. But what if I told you what you read and how you read might actually matter more than how much you read? And no, I'm not just talking about sticking to your genre. Today, we're looking into why reading widely is one of the best things you can do as a writer, and how it'll help you to become a better editor of your own work as well. First, let's start with the most obvious but underrated benefit, and that is genre cross-pollination. Reading outside of your genre is like mixing flavors in a recipe, and it can open creative doors that you never knew even existed. A fantasy writer might learn tight pacing from a thriller. A sci-fi writer could pick up emotional depth from a contemporary romance. It keeps your writing fresh, surprising, and layered. You're not copying, you're using tools from different toolboxes. Second, your writing voice is kind of like your fingerprint. It's unique. It belongs only to you. But it's also made up of every story, every sentence, every voice that you have ever loved. When you only read one kind of novel, then you risk sounding like every other writer in that space. But when you read widely, different genres, different time periods, even different formats, like say graphic novels or poetry, you start to notice how language works in different ways. Short, punchy sentences in thrillers, lyrical prose in fantasy, witty dialogue in middle grade. I found myself reading a sentence and just thinking, wow, I want my writing to be like that. If you've had a similar experience, let me know in the comments. I don't want to copy that, but I want to allow it to influence me and my voice when it comes to my writing. And that's how your style grows. Third, even if you're not a world-building heavy writer, this one matters. Reading nonfiction. Now, it might not be a favorite, but books on history, survival, psychology, or gardening and foraging adds depth to your stories. Let's say you're writing a dystopian setting. If you've read about real-world communities rebuilding after disasters, or survival stories from explorers or wartime journals, that's going to show up in your writing. It gives your work realism, even if your world is entirely fictional. Characters feel more grounded. Cultures have texture. Plot twists feel earned because they echo some truth. So read fiction for story and emotion, but don't skip the nonfiction. It's where a lot of great ideas are hiding. Fourth, every genre has its expected beats. Romance has that awkward, sweet first meeting. Thrillers have the ticking clock. And fantasy has the epic quests. And there is nothing wrong with those. Tropes exist for a reason, and that's because they work. But if you only read your genre, you might not realize you're leaning too heavily on cliche tropes. Reading widely will help you to see what is predictable, and it gives you that fresh idea, fresh perspective, so that you can make changes to your story, so that it doesn't fall into a cliche. And that's where your unique voice really shines, in how you twist something expected into something new and exciting. Fifth, sometimes the greatest creative spark can come from the most unexpected places. A poem might inspire your villain's voice. A travel book might give you your setting. A memoir could unlock your character's internal conflict. Your brain starts to make wild and wonderful connections when you read outside of your comfort zone. Sixth, now let's talk about something that's a little more practical. Proofreading. Reading widely trains your eye. You start to spot things that don't feel right. Stiff dialogue, awkward pausing, unnecessary explanations. But when it does come to editing your own writing, that can be tough because we're emotionally attached to it and we're very close to it. We might see what we meant to write and not always what's on the page. But the more widely you read, the easier it does become to be able to flip into reader mode and look at your work from a little more distance. And if you're still struggling to separate yourself from your words, that's totally normal, and I've got you. I created a proofreading checklist to help with that. The free download is linked in the description below. So if you're looking for a way to grow as a writer without burning out, read more. But more importantly, read widely. Try something outside of your comfort zone. Maybe a memoir, maybe a graphic novel, maybe a random book from your library on the display table. And let me know in the comments, what's the most unexpected book that has ever inspired your writing? I'd love to hear from you. Also, don't forget to grab that free proofreading checklist below. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. Until next time, happy writing and reading.